Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today's panel is going to be so freaking good because we're going to be talking about social media. And I feel like we have so many things to say about this. So let me start off by introducing the absolutely beautiful, amazing panel that we have here today. First off, we have Ruby Fremon, who's a spiritual guide and a sacred medicine facilitator and a potent truth teller. Her fucking podcast is awesome. I've been tuning in and definitely check it out. We've got Jamie Jensen, who is an award-winning writer and coach and absolutely one of the fucking most hilarious people I know. And then we've got Nina Lombardo, the teacher of the Sacred Feminine Arts, and she's also the creator of the account Way of Devotion. So welcome all. I'm so excited to have you. Part of why I specifically wanted to have all three of you on this conversation is because I've seen the way you all have shown up on social media a certain way, things that you have spoken about and addressed about the merits and the downfalls of social media. And so and also you're all just badass women who, are not afraid to just speak it like it is. So here we are. Let's talk about what the fuck is going on social media. And I want to start us off by talking a little bit about whether or not you guys feel we have a codependent relationship with social media, because I could tell you, this has been the hardest piece for me around running an online business is my relationship specifically to Instagram. So I'm curious to hear, and you guys just go for it, whoever feels inspired to start. Do you feel you have a codependent relationship, or us as a collective have created a codependent relationship on social media? And why do you think that is?
Well, I think I'd be lying if I said I didn't. But I'm fully aware of it. And the easiest way to describe it is that social media is really just built for addiction, right? From the like buttons to the follow, like everything fuels our sense of validation. But in that, we've also leaned really deeply into social media to support the building of our businesses. Not a bad thing. It has helped. Yet I feel it's really easy that when we're on those platforms to forget that those platforms are not, we don't own them. We don't own, it's not our property. And so we're going into someone else's home and using that home to advertise our businesses. And now all of a sudden we are in a codependent relationship with that home. So it's really easy for this to happen. I would say at this point in time, I'm currently brainstorming, trying new ways of engaging with my community that doesn't involve as much social media. But I think that right now, social media just the house is there for us to use, which is why so many people are using it and then entering these codependent relationships with these different platforms.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I pull away, I come back in, and it's like there's this constant sort of like push-pull energy, which feels so unsettling in my system on a baseline level. And I've been in this for a few years now. So yeah, I'm curious to hear what the other women have to say about it, what your experience has been, Jamie.
I don't know if I would define my relationship with social media as codependent specifically, but what I will say is that I 100% have a love-hate relationship with it. And I think that what's interesting is when I came into business, I enjoyed social media. Like, it was fun. I liked being a performer. I liked putting jokes on Facebook and being funny. I was bartending before I started my online business, and I liked using the platform to market when I was working, how I was working, what someone could expect from a shift. And I did it without really thinking about it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm trying really hard to be a marketer, or I'm trying really hard to market. It was just being myself on the internet and having fun with it. And I think that what's interesting is when I approach social media with that relationship with it, I can actually have a fun, engaging time where I'm like, my friends are here, we're having a good time. You know, it's when those other pieces come around that are about like how your business is performing, comparing yourself to other people on social media. Do you have enough followers? You know, what are the vanity metrics? Is your content performing? Are you doing enough? Are you posting enough for you to actually be effectively marketing your business? Like, these are the many different threads of thoughts that will unfold for me as I am continuing to use social media, you know, as a platform that I use in my business. And for me, I've thought a lot about leaving social media. Like, I think about it at least once a month where I'm like, can I do this without social media? Like, if I didn't need it, would I be happier and would that be better? I have friends who are intentionally not on social media and they are happier people. Like, it's not even a question. Like, the brain chemicals that they get to activate without the use or the draining of them through social media is fascinating to watch. Even just noticing like how you feel after you've been on social media versus before. I'm like, oh wow, I'm really drained. Like, I just scrolled for an hour and I feel worse than I felt before. So interesting to notice. And I think that can happen to anyone, even if they don't have a business or they don't have a dream of being a creator or building a following or having an audience or any of those things. I think they can still engage in social media, have those same brain chemicals triggered the way that they are, the way that the platforms are designed for addiction. And at the same time, I think that having a business that uses social media to market just adds an extra layer of shit. Where it's like, not only am I having all those brain chemicals get yanked on, right, in this way that makes us, everyone's a personal brand. Everyone has to show up on social media a particular way or feels they have to. And then to have your business, your livelihood, right, your relationship with purpose in the world, if that's connected to your work, also be attached to that. I think it just adds this extra layer of like, fuck, am I doing it right?
Fair enough. Yeah.
You have a good point with questioning how we feel after we use social media, because myself and everyone I know, rarely do we feel enlivened and energized after being on it. So if my relationship is codependent, I would probably identify it more as there's an addictive element, as Ruby was saying. It's set up for addiction. So I track that in myself, just the impulse to go on. And I find, and I'm sure we can all identify this with ourselves, that I'm happiest with it when I have really solid boundaries, when I show up to give, when I'm not consuming, so as much as possible when I'm in there, it's like, what can I give? What can I generate? What can I offer? But anytime I'm consuming something, rarely does it give me energy. And it's just an interesting thing to note in myself. It's just not a sustainable place for me to spend my time, but it is a generative place for me to give.
Yeah. You know, it's so interesting because like on a fundamental level, a lot of us have gotten into the world of teaching, coaching, wellness, the whole bubble, right? And because we wanted to change something in our world. And the challenge that I have when I'm using Instagram or Facebook or whatever, it's all the same company now, right? Is this feeling of I'm actually just doing the same thing that we talk about, like we've left. I'm my own boss. I'm running my own business. I'm doing it my way. This whole dream that we sold of leave your corporate job and that desk, that 9 to 5 and come do your own thing. But then on some level, I notice all the little ways, it's in the tiniest little distinctions where I decide, okay, but I need to promote this thing, or oh, now carousels are the thing, so I'm going to do even though I fucking hate them, or now we're doing reels. Oh, okay, now we're filmmakers again. I left the film industry for a reason because I don't want to do that anymore, right? Like, so, but all these little ways that we end up, or at least I'll speak to myself, like for my experience, I end up contorting just a little, like it's minor. It's not these big decisions. It's the little like, okay, it's fine. I'll just do another video. Oh, okay. I'll just, add another few slides in here because that's better for the algorithm. Oh, now I have to do a selfie because that's what they like instead of a picture of the horizon, which I think is actually way more beautiful than, another photo of me again. So I'm curious if you all have this experience as well, and what you think about what it means for us to be at the forefront of a supposed revolution and like a liberation from the man, the system. And yet we're operating so much of our business on a platform that's literally run by the man and is part of this big system and the old fucking way of doing things. So have at it. Thoughts?
I've been on such a journey with this, and right now I feel where I'm at is in a spirit of play. Like, if I'm going to engage with this, I'm going to come in with, like, yes, I know there's all these factors about it that I disagree with, that sometimes feel confining, that sometimes feel limiting. But I think we could relate a lot of life to that. Like, we're faced with lots of limitations, and at any moment we're given this opportunity of, how can I engage with this? How can I play with this? Because this is a conscious choice. I'm choosing to show up in this space. I recognize the gifts that it brings to my work and that I'm doing in the world. And so I'm going to show up in a spirit of play and generosity, as I said earlier. And when I can't do that, when it starts to deplete me, when it starts to wear down on me, which it does, that's when the break, that's when a pause comes in. Okay, time to disengage from the space because I can't show up in the way that I'm devoted to showing up here. Right. So it's really about listening to my own inner alignment.
I love that. Play, play, play. Okay. Just putting that in as a reminder for myself.
Yeah, Nina, I really loved what you said. And just like the real conscious embodiment of understanding how your body feels. Are you in contraction? Are you in expansion? Expansion with play, contraction when it starts to feel like you have to, or the shoulds. I've been someone who, prior to coaching, I owned a social media marketing agency. So I knew all about following trends and algorithms and like how to build strategies. But when I started showing up as a coach, the trends all of a sudden didn't feel pertinent to me, because now all of a sudden I was showing up as me. Like, I wasn't hiding behind a brand, the name of my company. So it was really important for me since day one of like showing up in ways that feel authentic. And I remember when Reels first came out and people were doing funny Reels, and like, I'm funny, but I'm not funny on purpose. I'm like awkward funny. I'll say funny things, but it's not like I can put a camera on and be super funny. And I think I tried one, maybe two Reels, like funny Reels. And one of them had my face and it wasn't really funny. And then the other one was like, I took a video of this, I don't know what it was, an ape having like a bad day at work or something, and I made a funny thing. However, I learned very quickly that that's just not my thing. When people said we got to go on TikTok because you can go viral on TikTok, I was like, well, none of my people are on TikTok, so why would it go? I'm in my 40s. Why am I going to go on TikTok? Doesn't make any sense. I used to be on every platform when I had other careers and I was utilizing social media for marketing for those careers. But as soon as it became me, it became more sacred. Like, I felt as if I needed to hold a more sacred energy with the way in which I was showing up and the content that I was sharing, because the content that I share is really from a place of service and teaching. So when it comes to trends, I always say, like, fuck trends, like, do what actually feels best and most organic. And Nadia, I think it's funny that you said you hate carousels. I love carousels. I love words. When they came out with carousels, I was like, oh, thank God I can put some longer form content out because I'm a writer. And that was something that I took on. It's something I'm still doing, even though people are saying carousels are dead. No, that's how I really like to share information. So yeah, going back to what Nina was sharing, like just that essence of really understanding how you're feeling in your relationship with social media at all times and holding that awareness at the forefront, I believe is so important. In fact, it's crucial, and it's like the thing that will prevent you from being eaten up alive by social media.
I love this, like the thread that we're pulling here around like what you said, Ruby, about like how much more sacred it felt because it was you, and that relationship with you being the voice, the brand, the presence, the person, the personality, like the business, the thing, right? I love that you're bringing that up, and it's making me think about a few different things that I just have questions about in this conversation. and I'm curious what Nina has to say about this too, knowing that, like, Nina, you have an account called The Way of Devotion, right? That is like the brand, like a brand, a platform. Is this concept of, relationship with social media, whether it's like you are the channel and it is you, like you're the platform, you're the channel, you're the brand, versus the brand being in some ways a separate entity from you, right? And like, how does that transform the relationship with creating content, or the relationship with showing up, or the relationship with trying strategies or trying trends? Does that change the way in which we can like separate ourselves more and separate our own like reactions or feelings from the content we're putting out there, whether it's because the content that we're supposed to create doesn't feel fully aligned with like what we're supposed to be doing or what we feel called to do, or like our reaction to how the content performs being taken really personally. Like I can be very like, no one fucking liked my picture. Like, why? You should all love me, and of course I'm doing a very exaggerated performed version of, my inner child when I share that, but it's a real thing that happens, whether it happens and then I become conscious of it, soothe it and move. Like it never doesn't happen at all, right? For me personally. And a question mark that I'm holding around this, particularly as I've been in conversation with friends of mine who have, 100,000 followers or more, 300,000 followers, right? They're like larger accounts as a personal brand. And then folks who are working on separating themselves from being like a personal brand or an influencer to having a model where they have like a company or a brand, even if it's not product based or e-commerce, that actually feels separate from them. And there are strategic reasons someone would choose to do that aren't just in some ways emotionally protecting yourself, which for me is a question I have. It's a question I have around like, is my approach to, marketing, even if my brand and business are coming from a place of service, like what is my responsibility as a marketer to bring that service out, to show it more, right? Like in a way that it is connected to a higher purpose, connected to being generous, connected to doing more good in the world on some level, right? And so what is my relationship with that? And does it change if I feel like there's a brand that is like a entity outside of me? So that's just sort of a question mark I have. I'd be curious just to hear what you all think about that, and particularly if you have a perspective on that, Nina.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to pull from there. And I've never experimented with having my own personal like brand. And I think part of it is just my nature, my preference. I'm a little more reserved and private, so I don't like to let the public in. And I've experimented with that in Way of Devotion. Like I am the one behind it. I'm the creator of it. I'm the one who writes and who teaches and facilitates. But there's something about having this bigger vision that's beyond me to invite people into, that if I weren't there, there'd still be an experience to it. Like if I'm not there, Way of Devotion, I started it in 2017 and it's developed over the years, but it's always been like this like feeling that I want to invite other people into, that never really felt appropriate to put me at the center of that. sometimes, I'll experiment with how my voice comes through that, but it feels just aligned. So, yeah, that's, I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, I'm going to dive in if there was no other pieces around this. I I really want to talk a little bit about our responsibility as leaders. And so we've talked a lot about the user experience and our personal relationships with social media as consumers and as the people posting and marketing. And I'm also curious to hear a little bit more about what we can do to, I guess, subvert, disrupt the medium a little bit, because we do have a certain amount of power to do that. And so I think we're all, I think, in agreement that there's this ethos that's being created, in particular around, I think, the algorithm, but I'm curious to hear if you guys think there's other pieces there where, for the longest time, it was like selfies were the thing that did the best. So pre-reel, pre-carousel, like when it was just like, hey, we post a photo and we write things. Life was so easy then, right? It's like, what was it? It was like selfies did the best. And there's something about the combination of the algorithm loving faces, the fact that it's, for most of us, accounts with personal brands or people coming up and being like, this is me, this is my lifestyle, this is what I did today, this is how I look, here's the beach I'm on today. That created this level of like an internal culture of self-referencing, right? It becomes this loop of, oh, I have to tell the world about me today because this is how I keep going. And then you become very self-referential in your day-to-day. I mean, I started to notice it when I would go out and be like, oh, I guess I should document this because it's good for business. But I don't want to. Like, I have zero, like, I want to be having dinner with my friends and leaving it at that. I don't need to like take a picture and then tag everyone. Look at me, I'm so cool. And yet there was this voice in my head that was like, oh, but you don't do it enough. And everyone tells you you're not posting enough. So like, maybe this is a thing you should do. So I'm curious if this has come up for you all, and what you think our responsibility is as leaders to possibly shift that and disrupt the ethos that is growing and growing around me, essentially.
I'll jump on this. As you were sharing, what that's like, the self-referencing, the like, I need to post this, I need to share this. I go back at my earlier days on Instagram where I really felt that, like, it felt like a struggle. Like, I have to show this, like, I have to do this thing and then show it to people. And that never really sat well with me. I feel like there was something that shifted pretty early on for me that removed me from that space. And I think it was, well, I'm more introverted in person. Like, in person, I'm awkward, introverted. I'm not going to start conversations. I might be in the corner with one person speaking when I'm at a party. That's it. I don't even go to parties though. So there's that too. But with the online space, I felt like I was noticing this in other people. And then I started getting a lot of clients who would share how maybe past experiences working with coaches would be to try and have them do things a certain way. And that didn't sit well with them. And for me, that's like the exact opposite of what I do. And I realized that this is why that idea of showcasing my life, of showing everything that I do online, doesn't fit, because I'm not here to create copycats. I'm not here to have everyone be like me. And in fact, I don't want that. I don't talk, you wouldn't know I was married unless you know me. I think people do, but I stopped sharing my husband on social media a long time ago. I stopped talking about our relationship a long time ago. That is sacred. That is something that I hold very sacred, very close to my heart. there's certain aspects of our life and lifestyle that I don't show. You know, when we moved to Austin and bought a dream home, everyone was like, show your home. And I was like, that also doesn't feel good. Like, this is my sacred space. You'll see pictures and videos of my ceremony space because that's the space that I bring people into, but nothing else. And so there's this importance, again, like going back to like holding things sacred, but then you also have to get really clear on what it is that you're doing online. If you are, for example, in a type of business where you are showcasing a lifestyle and that's what you're selling, like you're actually selling the lifestyle, that's different. I'm not selling a lifestyle. Like, I want you to create the lifestyle that feels best for you. And so that's why I don't show much of my lifestyle. I will say that when stories became a thing, that's where I got a little bit tripped up, you know, showing pictures of like my acai bowl, showing selfies of me after a workout. And after this really long break that I just recently took, I realized like what was really driving those urges, like to show the selfie after a workout. One was to keep myself motivated. Two was to inspire, but then three is like also the validation, you know, and I admit that, like I'm human enough to admit that. Same with like, oh, look at this healthy acai bowl. Look how healthy I am. And I would encourage you to be healthy. So there's like the shadow and the light aspect of that, which I've gotten super clear on. And it's with that awareness that I'm now moving forward on how I want to show up. So I think it is like, one, getting really clear on what your business is here to do. Like, are you here to sell a lifestyle? What is it? And then two, to really model the social media usage, like how you're showing up, to really align with that which you are selling or serving and teaching.
Mm. Oh, that's such a good point. And I never thought about it that way.
I'd love to add to that, Ruby. It just brought up just a lot of different thoughts for me. And I'll speak to my own experience here of exploring this. Love is really the foundation of my work. I want to invite people into the experience of love in themselves, right? And there's so many things that I've experimented with throughout the years where I had to double check myself. Like, is this doing the thing that is the core of my work? Like you said, like, is me sharing a random picture of this or whatever, bragging about X, Y, and Z. Like, what is this actually creating in the experience of my audience? What is this evoking in their body? I know what it evokes for me when I see other people do these things, and it's usually not love. It's usually comparison or jealousy, which maybe, yes, on the big grand scale are dimensions of love, you know, teaching us about ourselves. But that's not the experience that I want to invoke upon first impression. So for me, it's really been an ever-evolving exploration of like, what can I bring into this moment, not just through social media, but through everything that really like invokes that feeling of remembrance for people. And it's hard in social media because I could bring in an intention of pure love and it might not be received that way. Whatever you put out could invoke anything. So it's not like we could control people's responses to what we're putting out there. But I think what I can have ownership over is where I'm coming from in myself and really, really tracking that. What is my intention here? And sometimes there is that egocentric intention of, I just want to be seen. I just want to be noticed. I just want to be celebrated. That's okay. I think it's important to be conscious of it and to own that. I'm putting this out there for this reason, instead of like, you know, masquerading it under some other guise. So I think coming in with, yeah, just who am I here to serve and how does this serve, with the ways that we show up. And I think the more as service providers, as people who want to create a service, that's a question we have to always ask ourselves. Yeah, how is this serving in the way that I really value and really aspire to serve? Is it serving? And if not, what can I adjust?
I love it. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of like that these threads of it's the way that we can actually disrupt a medium that is about validation, like, or that really breeds on people's insecurities and validation and, you know, narcissistic tendencies and me and all that stuff, is actually by us having a resonance in the post and an intention in the post that is more in alignment with the values that we are holding as the brand or as ourselves and as teachers.
I have something to add. I have a couple things to add on this. Sorry.
Good. We're doing a little laugh break.
We're just giggling for a minute.
Good for the soul.
Good for the soul. So I just want to share what's coming up for me as I'm listening to all of this. And I'm like, I love this. This feels so aligned and so beautiful. And like everything, like yes. And there's the part of me that's like I'm a provocateur. Like I don't want everyone to feel love all the time. And I'm not saying that that's bad or wrong. I'm saying that as we're having this conversation, I'm noticing like, what is an alignment for me? What is the role that I like? There are pieces of my role as a brand and as a coach and as a service provider that like, there is that piece of like compassion and safe container and love and the energy of love in the field of that sensation. And there is also very much a like provocateur, think about it differently, kind of mess up your mind for a second sometimes thing that like I want to just own. Like she's here and I want to offer it because I think anyone who's listening to this, who's thinking about this, there's like you kind of get to be who you really are and do the work you're here to do. And sometimes being generous and of service looks different than we think it should. And so I want to offer that because I'm like, like, I think there's a part of me, I'm just owning, that thinks I should always make someone feel comfortable or a certain way. And the truth is that's actually not the truth of my design. It's not the truth of like my sole purpose. So I'm not saying this to make this about me. I'm saying this to sort of bring into the conversation the thread of like, I'm not trying to trigger compare and despair for people. And like, I know that there is a value and also like putting content out, if it's aligned for your brand, that does make people a little uncomfortable. And as you're talking about disruption, and choosing the thing that is going to disrupt whatever the trends are, or whatever the relationship with the platform is, I just want to open up the concept of, for this conversation, the concept of like, what would it mean to disrupt the trend or the thing you're supposed to be doing or the should, or disrupt the way we use the platform? And like, what are the creative ways that you can accomplish that for your own branding, for your own marketing plan, for your own content approach, for your own relationship with content? And might that look like saying, I hate carousels, so I don't care what the algorithm wants. I'm going to do the thing that I'm devoted to. I'm going to do the thing that feels disruptive for me, that like, this is the content that excites me. This is the content that, to go back to something Nina said earlier, feels like play and feels fun. Or for someone like my personality would feel like this feels provocative and that's exciting to me. And that makes it fun for me and playful. And so can I for 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, allow myself to explore what that would be for ignoring the trends and creating the content that actually feels true for what excites me and feels like play, or even just feels disruptive if that's like an exciting doorway to walk through, right?
Yeah. I'm curious, have you guys tried that? Have you played with, has there been things that have been really successful for you in terms of specifically either just like full on like, okay, I'm going on hiatus for a while, which I know some of you have done, or staying on the platform, but going, I'm going to do this particular type of post, or I'm going to be really intentional about the way in which I express myself on here, and what has really worked for you? Because I want to learn. I'm like here, I feel like I'm taking a course on social media right now because I have a very bad relationship with it as a business owner. So I'm super curious if there's things you've tried that have worked, and also if you feel to share any things that you've tried that like epically failed, and what you learned from that.
I mean, what's always worked for me is speaking my truth. I mean, my whole brand is about truth. And that, piggybacking off of what Jamie shared, I'm a truth speaker. And I believe that truth can be objective, right? So I am my own truth speaker. And an example of that without going into it is like when there are political things happening in the world, really, really easy to go on the train of duality and pick a side. But I don't play sides. And it's not that because I'm too kind. It's because I really like to dance in the nuance and really understand the human psychology behind what's going on, or the history behind like what led to now, or like understanding why each side believes what they believe. Like that's really important to me. So truth and speaking my truth, no matter how triggering it may be for some people, has always, I wouldn't say been successful, but it's just worked because that feels really, really good. When it comes to like polarities, because if we're talking about disruption, I think a lot of people over the past 3 years have taken polarizing content to the extremes. What I noticed in my personal observation of what was going on in 2020 and how things started shifting on the social media landscape is people started noticing that polarizing content was getting more engagement, period. Just engagement, good or bad, whatever it is. And so people started to piggyback their followings on this. They started to build large audiences on polarizing content. And I remember when I was sharing just my own opinions and my own beliefs and my own views, all of a sudden, like people started sharing my content a lot, and my audience grew a lot. And I actually stepped back because I was like, whoa, I felt the responsibility. And I didn't really do it for that, but it freaked the shit out of me. And so I took a step back and I was like, okay, like, how do I want to show up right now? Everyone's being polarizing for the sake of being polarizing, for the sake of disruption, for the sake of the likes and the engagement. But how is it that I truly want to share and teach and speak? And I found that space that worked well for me, which had me come back with what some might describe a softened edge. The edge is still there. I'm just very conscious of how I share and what I share. And I think that in itself disrupts the feeds, because there is a visceral difference in your body when you're reading something that sounds like everything else, and when you're reading something that sounds different, that sounds like someone's truth, whether that be their heart, and being vulnerable, or whether that be having the courage to say something that some people may not dare to say, especially in a world of cancel culture and shame culture. But I really, really believe that one's truth, not my truth, not the truth, but like one's truth has the power to pierce through the mundane of the feed when it's done with it, like true authenticity, when you're being in integrity to yourself.
I love this conversation so much. Yeah, so I've again throughout the years experimentation, and I teach polarizing, I teach polarity, I teach polarizing concepts, sex. So I've found I was able to build quite a following by being the provocateur for a while. Like, as you said, people love especially in the realm of sexual polarity, it's like men, women want you to blah, 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 just like really, straightforward statements that people are either a hardcore yes to or a hardcore no to, but that's what builds engagement, right? And so there's actually, I think we could, if we're choosing to play in that consciously, and if that's what we want to invoke, and we're willing to take the responsibility for creating that ripple, then yes, by all means, play with that, engage with that. I found, like you, Ruby, that is not in line with my truth. Sometimes it is. Sometimes I still have the provocateur. I like to, just put a statement out there and feel the ripple effect. But I found what feels most aligned is sharing poetry, because the concepts that I teach they have a seeming dualism to them, but actually there's a non-dual perspective that is the most important revelation for me to transmit. And most people aren't grasping that when I'm speaking in the dualistic language. So how do I transmit the non-dual revelation? Usually I found is through poetry, is through art, is through non-linear means. And that is what kind of evokes the feeling of, oh, there's something deeper than like this push and pull, or beyond the masculine, feminine. There's actually a thread of wholeness in this that is very difficult to convey when we're using really polarizing language that kind of pushes people into one perspective or the other. And I found the best way to convey the thread or the pulse is through nonlinear means. And poetry, people would think that that's not something that's popular on social media, but some of my most engaged with posts, most shared posts, are just poems that like really speak to people's hearts, like something universal within us. And I think that's what inspires me on social media. That is the content I actually am energized by, that fills my heart, that fills me with this sense of like, this is what it means to be human. And that, I realize, is what is important for me to convey.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like, what a beautiful way to disrupt a medium with art, right? With poetry. That feels so good.
I just want to be a voice on this panel that's like, I don't know what works for me. I have no idea. I'm still trying stuff and experimenting and playing, and it changes every moon cycle. So I just want to say that.
Yeah, it's important, like, for us to have that space of permission and allowance to continue to experiment. I know I'm there with you, Jamie. It's like I'm like, okay, I think I finally figured it out. And it's just kidding. Okay, I'm just totally gonna go off it. Just kidding. keep on trying things.
Yeah. What I'll add to this too is like, there are things that have worked, right? But have they worked for me? Have they worked for me and worked for my business? Have they worked for me and worked for my community? Have they worked for me and worked for my clients? Have they worked for me and worked for my sales? And so I'm still in an exploration, a conversation, a curiosity with all of it. It's not to say that nothing has ever worked for me. It's that, like, as I shift, something else wants to shift in my relationship with that. As my business evolves, something else wants to shift in my relationship with social media and the content I create. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. I want to zoom out, like, I mean, we've been zooming out slowly, but I'm going to go like super, super far out. And talk a little bit about just some things that come up for me when I look at social media as a whole. And I like really zoom out in terms of like the history of humanity, and like how we're going to hopefully look back at, oh, remember that time where we used to do that silly thing where we had like Instagram. That's my like big future vision. And I think a big part of that is because when I really zoom out and I look at what's happening, I just see a continuous chipping away of our humanity on the deepest level. I know all of you have embodiment as such a core value and practice. all of you have ways in which you go out and spend time in nature and be with, you know, what actually we're here for, like our true environment, not the mental, like virtual one that we're spending so much time in. And so I don't even know if there's a question in here. I think I just want to bring this forth because I feel like there's going to just be some things that pop up in each one of us around this. But there's this way in which I just want to pull the plug on it all and just be like, can everyone just go out and be in nature? Like, why are we doing this? So there's this like, but it's so ingrained in every way that we do things. And then I wonder, okay, well, as a business owner, is this part of what I can do? Like if I unplug more and if I say, hey, community, like I want to be in connection with you, because that's like, you know, Jamie, you were sharing how like initially like Facebook, we were just like, hey, look, here's a picture of this and here's what I have to think about this. And, you know, it was so naively beautiful in that it was just a way to connect with people. And we all want to be in connection with our community. So it's like, do we send them over back to our email? Do we send them back to Substack? Do we send them to somewhere else and will that be the better place, right? Like, so I don't know. These are just like all things that I'm constantly questioning that I don't at all have the answer to. But the ultimate, like the deep nagging sensation inside my body is one of like, oh my God, when are we going to be done with this phase? So we can come back to this place of feeling more nourished and whole when we're actually being together with ourselves, with God, in nature, you know, and so on, and not be sitting there commenting and liking and shit. So I know that wasn't a direct question, but let's see if there's some stuff that popped up for anyone around this.
I have a thing.
Okay.
I have a thing. It's very articulate thing. Well, what you're sharing reminds me, it like really loops me back to like this piece that Nina shared around creating art and using the platform in that way. You know, that is something that also resonates with me, like personally, and even as a marketer and as a marketing strategist person. There is a way within which like a brand can make a choice to engage with their content as art and to treat their marketing as art. And what I hear when you talk about connection and communing and like relationship with God is, I think, you know, that as a writer, right? Like I have a very deep spiritual connection with the work that I create. And I've always felt like I was channeling, right? So what I feel called to offer around this is just like this sort of like looping back to what Nina had shared and this opening concept of, if you are creating from a place that is in connection with the God within you and what wants to move through you, you know, and that is your relationship with your business, with your content, with your service. I have two things here. One is like, to me, that feels in some ways like the ultimate nirvana of content creation. You know, it's like, can we be that plugged in? Right. And then on the other hand, there's this question mark that I've seen this question raised by some other, you know, accounts and friends that I follow in this sort of conversation of, you know, how, if you were just in community, just with nature, just like, and there wasn't this connection to like service or purpose that can come from like the work that we're doing in the world. I think all of us here feel a degree of soul connection to the work that we're doing. We're not just doing it because like, this was an easy way to make money, someone once said. And so now, like, right, like this, no one's like, hey, this is a job. That's right. Like, so with that in mind, there is the question mark of, you know, at what point would you start to miss the creation of content that gets shared with a community, the building of community, the connection that gets to happen online that is global, that isn't just local? Like, at what point would you feel the pull back to that on some natural level? And like, how much does that actually become a piece of the larger picture? And that this is just the way in which we're doing it today. And it comes with all these fucking downsides, but there's also like a presence of fulfillment there. And I share that also because I burned a lot of my programs down in 2021 and made a choice to not market or sell for 6 months. And in doing that part of the I wasn't off social media, but the devotion that I was committed to in that period of time was not creating from a space of should or have to, or it's a strategy, or, and just seeing what naturally wanted to move through me, what naturally wanted to be expressed through me, what programs did I actually want to be offering, how did I want to engage. And I'm not saying that I definitely didn't exit that period of time, as you can tell, with and here's what I learned, and it's a perfect little thing. But what I will say is it definitely gave me perspective on the way in which, not from an addictive place, there is nourishment in engagement too. And there is a place within which it does plug into work that I feel called to do personally. And so I kind of have to hold the truth of that, the responsibility of that, with all the parts of me that are really whiny and miserable about social media. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, expression, like all of us feel good when we're expressing, and these platforms do allow us to express and then to connect with people who are receiving our expression, which is awesome. And there's witnessing is an incredibly, I mean, so much of what I do with women in the sensual movement space is I've seen the power of being witnessed and what that does to the body and the heart and the spirit. And so it's that light and shadow that Ruby was talking about, where it's okay, well, there is something really beautiful about being witnessed in your expression and recognized in what you're saying or putting out into the world. And when does it become now hunger? And okay, now I'm just doing it to get something, right? And now it's hooky and codependent again. And it's all about I actually don't love myself, and I need you to love me and my content in order for me to fill this hunger on the inside. As opposed to, oh, I'm overflowing with inspiration and I'm going to share something and I hope you receive it. And it feels really great when you do.
It's such a beautiful distinction that I feel could be applied to all domains of life, right? All of our relationships would be nourished if we could feel that distinction in ourselves. And it's really just a matter of becoming aware of it. Am I trying to feel something here? Or is it's just feeling it on a bodily level. It's like this hunger filling void versus this outpouring moving forward. And I think sometimes all it takes is an awareness to make the shift for ourselves, to take a breath, right? It's so much embodied work. Are we getting sucked into just needing to fill, or can we take a pause and then check in with ourselves, check in with our values, check in with our purpose, and make that shift? And I know for myself, sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes, because of the addictive quality, it really is no matter how deep my spiritual practice is, every time I put something out there, there's a part of me, the human part of me, that is I want this to be loved. I want this to be liked. I want this to, be seen. And I can have compassion for that part of myself without being consumed by it, and always remembering the bigger self, the bigger no, this is an offering, which is quite a high spiritual practice in a sense. It's really surrendering this attachment to the ego self and surrendering to the bigger self that's connected, where we're all deeply connected, and on that plane it's just an orientation.
Yeah. So good to keep
Jamie.
practicing that.
Sorry,
Okay.
Nadia.
Go for it.
Jamie, what you had said, really got my mind running, all of what you said, especially the piece about, when we're in community and would we still feel fulfilled without that sense of purpose? And that's what I hear is the purpose. And I think that we all serve, every human that is in a service-based industry is actually serving in their own unique way. And we're doing so, well, some of us are doing so, all of us here are doing so because of a sense of purpose, of dharma, and I feel really, really connected to my dharma. And this recent, so I take long breaks often. I go to the Amazon jungle often. So in the jungle, there's no connection. So my phone is just off for weeks at a time. But this last break I took was 4.5 months, almost 5 months. And it was in this break where I've just really been reflecting on on a lot, on like my dharma, on how I want to show up and how I want to serve. And it became really clear to me that the way in which I'm serving has shifted. Like, just even looking back from, I mean, Jamie, you were at my events when I used to do the 3-day events and have upwards of 100 people in a room. And like, I like to this day don't know how I did that, but it was fun. It was a good time. Like, I was really good at it. I loved it. It felt super, super aligned with my dharma at that time. And then my dharma started to shift, and now a lot of my work is really, really sacred, and it's stuff that I don't want to show online. It's stuff that I don't also like to talk about a lot. And because of that, I felt this need to become more intimate with everything that I'm doing and not showcase as much. And yet on my 4.5-month long break, I started to miss the expression. And I realized that teaching is actually a part of my dharma too. So it's not just the coaching, it's not just the facilitating, it's also teaching. And I honestly feel that if I was in a community and I was able to teach in community and serve in community, I'd be super happy without social media, because quite frankly, I don't want to be on anywhere. But until then, until I find that community and move somewhere where I can actually have that, this is it. And so it's now coming back onto social media. It's now like this, okay, I'm going to go in, teach, come back out, and then go back in, teach, come back out. And that's the dance that I'm currently in, as this is helping to serve my dharma. And serving my dharma to me is the same as like serving God, and it just feels good. And then Nadia, what you were saying about like when you take these breaks, then like, do we direct people to different places? And that was like I was like, okay, where am I going to direct people? I know I'm about to go on this super long break. Where am I going to direct people on my email list? I have a love-hate relationship with emails. I think email, like, that's the thing you own. We should all have an email list. You own this. You have this. Okay. This is your community. However, the likelihood of everyone opening up an email is slim to none until someone figures out a way to like have people open up all your emails. It just doesn't happen. You can have a really good open rate, but even that's not going to be 100%. And so for this break, I just said, if you need to get a hold of me to work with me, apply here. If you want to send a question, text here. If you want to do this, go to this page on my website. That was it. I just kept it simple. And now coming back, I'm realizing, the long form content is my jam. So directing people to Substack, but then there's like but then you don't own that email list. So it's just like this mind fuck of like, where do you put people? Where can you really build your community? You want to build a mighty networks, great, but that's also on someone else's platform. So I think that with community building, I feel like I just stared somewhere totally different. I don't even know what the question was, but when we are engaging with community, building community, being in community in an online format, as of right now, we have to do our best with what's available to us, and also what feels the best and most nourishing for us. For me, I've really found it's writing. So I'm writing more on Substack. The podcast, I actually really want to share this because I think it's important. My podcast has been running since 2017, really long time. It was audio only it was audio with like a YouTube video that was literally just my Zoom video with a person. That was it. Last year, I finally upped my game and did what everyone else is doing with the video editor, the live video with a really great camera. And my editor would create these snippets, like everyone's doing this. And before I went on break, I was looking on my feed and I was like, there's so much me on my feed. And it wasn't that it's like selfies, but there's just me on camera all over my feed. And I hated that feeling. And so now coming back, I'm like, oh, am I going to go back to audio only? So I say that to say, like, sometimes we do just have to try things to figure out what doesn't work and what does work. And sometimes we just need to step away to reflect on what actually feels good and feels in the highest alignment with our truth and our integrity.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for speaking to that, and also for steering us in the direction of the community conversation, because actually that stirred up something in me, a distinction that feels important to mention here, which is that I think as all humans, but in particular women, we do well in circle, right? Like we do well in community. We love being huddled around, something in the center, that whether it be a little fire or an altar or something, and just connect, whatever that means. It could be about anything and everything. And so when we are coming to these different platforms and even, ways of expression such as email lists, if we are doing it from a place of where can we gather, can we come and connect, like let's huddle, let's talk about it, as opposed to the ethos of look at me and the sort of pedestaling and the selling of a lifestyle and essentially the influencer coach archetype as a general concept. Those are two very different energies. And to be like me, or come, let's talk about it. And one thing I love about podcasts is I do feel, whether audio, video, I don't even care, but when I hear people expressing, I feel them in most cases, okay, the good podcasters, if they're doing a solo episode, they're like, come listen to me. I have some things that I think might, like, let's talk about it. And then of course, if they're interviewing, then it's sort of a back and forth conversation. But that's very different than I'm, the Tony Robbins archetype that, in the 90s, we all were watching and was like, okay, I stand on the platform and I say all the things and I'm right and everyone else is wrong. And that whole like energy that none of us are into. I'm speaking on behalf of you all, but I'm going to assume that that's the case, but feel free to, veto that. So I don't know, it feels like an important distinction to make as well, and to be aware of and think about as we continue to cultivate this, because the urge is innocent and it's beautiful. It's one of, let's bring people together, which is always what women did in the village. And like, okay, we're not in a kitchen cooking together, but can we do this in some other way that is the 2023 version? And like Ruby shared, the idea of working with what we have at the moment, even though I will continue to hold that vision of like, can we all get off this shit and do something else? But I think that there is a way that it's really beautiful for us to work with what we have, and at least be the ones to make a conscious decision to do it differently. Yeah. Okay, so in closing, I would love to just go around the circle and ask you a very specific question. And I've been asking this with all the panels. And that is around the subject of social media. If you had one little prayer that you wanted to offer into the space, what would that be? And also what I'm going to call just prescription, for the case of, I like the P and the P, but really like a call to action or something that you think people can take away that they can implement, whether they are service providers or the consumers, right? So whatever feels important to you. But to speak to, just a prayer into the space and a prescription, or something that people can take away with and go implement as of now.
Okay, prayer. May we be of service as humble stewards for humanity in our use with social media and in life, period. prescription, but this be like a little takeaway, something they can apply.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to keep that piece simple, and it's just a question before you hit enter to post anything. Just ask yourself, this is for the service-based providers. Am I sharing this to serve my ego, or am I sharing this to serve my community?
Beautiful. Thank you.
My prayer is may we trust where we are guided and what wants to move through us and be expressed. And my prescription is it's an extension of this, in a reflection of reminding that it's okay to be a personal brand. It's okay to be the star of your social media. And it's okay to enjoy it if you do. And when it comes to service, offer branding, marketing, really speaking to the person you want to serve and reach, is also another piece of that pie. It's not really, from my perspective, one or the other. So just holding the both end of that and allowing yourself to enjoy it.
Yeah. Awesome.
My prayer is, may we remember our deep hearts, and when we forget, to playfully come back to it. And the prescription, yeah, I feel like they're one and the same, the prayer and the prescription. Always remember your deep heart. What is the deepest part of you desire? What is the most intimate, secret parts of you that are beyond needing to be beautiful or to receive validation, the deep, secret, artful parts of your heart? Remember that, and remember that as a gift, and trust your ability to bring it forward. And also remember that you're going to fuck up and that's okay. And we're all in this together.
I love all of this so much. And I'll throw in a little prayer here, and that is that selfishly, I would love for us to find a beautiful, thriving, nourishing relationship with the online platforms that exist and that will exist in the future, while also continuing to grow our in-person communities and finding ways for women like ourselves to come together, for those of us who geographically are closer together, to be able to somehow find new ways to gather these women in actual rooms. So I guess the prescription would be go to more in-person events. Thank you all for such a wonderful conversation. I feel like we could riff on so much more, because there's so many layers to just all the pieces that you each brought into the space. And for those who are listening and watching, above, to the side, or below somewhere, you will see everyone's bios and click through to their work. If you don't already follow them, make sure to go and do that if you felt really inspired, which I'm sure you did based on our beautiful conversation today. Thank you all so much for sharing your hearts and your wisdom and your time.
Thank you.